You have made it to month number 9. Gratitude is a must, considering the uncertainties of the time. You can't be sure how the day, this week, month, or year will end. But what you can do is be prepared as much as possible. Be prepared to vote safely. Be prepared to weather any tropical system that may come our way. That's our main focus on this September 1 edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm Carrie-Ann Smith-McIntosh. I'll be back with you for the day's news package right after this break.
On Election Day, all electors must wear a mask and have their hands sanitized. Electors must observe 6 feet physical distancing and remove your mask when instructed by the presiding officer so you may be identified. You will be issued a ballot along with a pencil and directed to the voting booth. Hand your ballot to the presiding officer and place your pencil in the box for used pencils. Sanitize your hand before dipping your finger in the electoral ink. This is a message from the Electoral Commission of Jamaica.
Good day, I'm Carrie-Ann Smith-McIntosh, and this is your GIS News for Tuesday, September 1. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton is warning that provisions of the Disaster Risk Management Act will be rigorously enforced as part of government's increased COVID-19 control measures. The minister says that of particular concern are persons not observing the quarantine protocols and too many people still not wearing masks in public spaces. On Monday, Dr. Tufton and teams from his ministry and the Southeast Regional Health Authority carried out a public education activity in Halfway Tree Square to promote the use of masks in public spaces. Members of the public were given Ministry of Health branded fabric masks. While distributing the items, the minister stressed that the police would be working with public health officials to ensure more rigorous enforcement of the protocols, which include mandatory wearing of masks in public spaces. This assertion came as the country recorded 102 new COVID-19 cases on August 31, bringing the total to 2,459. Of the newly confirmed cases, 41 are from Kingston and St. Andrew, 21 in Portland, 12 in Manchester, 7 in St. Thomas, and 5 each in St. Catherine and St. Elizabeth. New cases were also recorded in Clarendon, St. Anne, St. James, St. Mary, and Trelawney. There are now 1,476 active cases being monitored across the country, while 890 persons have recovered and been discharged from care. Meanwhile, the Health and Wellness Ministry is reminding persons making application for travel to Jamaica that they must upload the required PCR test for COVID-19 to the JamCovid website. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Dunstan Bryan, says incorrect submissions have created issues for travelers and delays in the processing of applications.
Many persons are uploading tests that cannot be validated, and therefore we have had to decline or reject the application, and that poses challenge for the persons to get the boarding clearance that they need to travel. We continue to indicate to travelers that it's a PCR test that has to be uploaded and not the antibody test, and that's one of the major problems that we are seeing, where persons are uploading antibody tests to the system as their validation for travel. And
Mr. Bryan was speaking at the ministry's recent virtual media briefing. He outlined that approval would not be granted where applications were reviewed and found to have incorrect submissions. The Ministry of Education will be rolling out a series of psychosocial sessions for students in September to help them cope with their fears and anxieties that have been brought on by the COVID-19 outbreak. The news was revealed by Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Kassan Troop during a virtual back-to-school sensitization session for primary, high, and tertiary students last Wednesday.
So we will have trained persons that will be coming into your virtual spaces. Yes, some persons will be engaged on the virtual space in empowerment and psychosocial counseling sessions, while in extreme cases, right, based on what you're feeling, our social workers, our guidance counselors, our health and family life educators will make themselves available, observing, of course, the physical distancing. If they have to see you based on what is happening, we will make ourselves available.
For primary students that are without guidance counselors, Dr. Troop says the ministry is working with the principals to make sure they have access. The Transport Authority has extended its amnesty for the renewal of road licenses until September 30, 2020. The amnesty applies to operators of both public passenger vehicles and commercial carriers and is for road licenses that expired March 31, 2019. It gives these operators a reprieve from paying late fees. Customer Service Coordinator at the authority, Charlene Hamilton, says this is to ease the plight of persons who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The authority is urging operators to use the opportunity to renew their licenses and legitimize their operations, as failure to do so will result in the licenses being invalid once the amnesty period has ended. For additional information, persons may call 876-618-0959. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security is allowing pensioners to cash their vouchers for this month early. National Insurance Scheme NIS pensioners who have vouchers with payable dates in September 2020 will be able to cash them as of Thursday, September 3. The early encashment is available only at post offices. Director of the National Insurance Scheme, Portia Magnus, says the ministry is looking at alternative payment options for NIS pensioners, as the National Commercial Bank has advised that it will no longer encash pension order vouchers. In the meantime, she's encouraging pensioners to sign up with the NIS's direct deposit payment system, which allows for payments to be made directly to their bank accounts. The early encashment of vouchers initiative is set to continue until December 2020. It is part of the ministry's efforts to ensure that pensioners have access to their benefits during the COVID-19 crisis. And finally, the Electoral Office of Jamaica EOJ says there was a 56% turnout for yesterday's Special Services voting for the September 3 general election. Under the Representation of the People Act, provisions are made for the police, military, and election day workers to vote 3 days before the rest of the population to ensure that they are available for duty on election day. The EOJ says it has completed sorting the ballots cast by these electors at 377 polling stations island-wide on Monday. Of the 46,777 Special Services personnel, 26,276 or 56% voted. This compares to a Special Services voter turnout of 63% in the 2016 general election. Director of Elections Glasspool Brown says reports from across the island indicate a fairly quiet day. Special Service voters' ballots are placed in specially marked individual envelopes, which are then sorted the night after they vote. The envelopes remain sealed and vaulted and will be counted on election day, along with the ballots cast by civilian non-election day workers. And that's it for JIS News today. I'm Karen Smith McIntosh. Thanks for watching.
Find out where you are to vote by calling the EOJ or checking the EOJ website. Remember to bring your voter ID card. Current voter ID cards are valid until December 2020. Remember, you may still vote without your ID card, but the process will be longer. Listen to the instructions of the presiding officer. Mark your ballot behind the voting booth and return your ballot to the presiding officer folded. Once the counterfoil is removed, your ballot cannot be traced back to you. Dip your finger in the ink and watch as your ballot is deposited into the ballot box.
Your vote is your voice. Make it count.
Jamaicans go to the polls this Thursday to elect the administration that will govern the country for the next parliamentary term. This time, the general election is being contested amidst COVID-19. We hear now from the Electoral Office of Jamaica on how the affairs of the day will be officiated.
The mandate of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica and certainly the mandate of EOJ is to ensure that we have a free and fair election, allowing everybody who's entitled to be a part of the process be able to do. We are operating in a COVID pandemic environment. And what the commission has sought to do, and we put out a lot of information there. Actually, yesterday we issued a press release. What we sought to do is to put together a protocol, which was reviewed by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and also look at what prevails in terms of WHO standard and PAHO standard. I went a little bit further to look at what took place in other jurisdictions in terms of how they operated in their election. We looked at what happened in South Korea. We looked at what happened in Suriname and in St. Kitts. And we looked at as far as India in terms of what they were doing. And so we have come up with a protocol which we intend to roll out on election day. We did so on nomination day, and certainly we think we did fairly well as it relates to maintaining that issue. Most of the problem was outside our jurisdiction, outside our area. But what took place in the nomination center clearly gave an indication what will happen on election day. And we're gonna basically break it down into two aspects. One is focusing on our staff that will be using in election in terms of, the second aspect would be in terms of the elector. Our approach and the posture that we'll take on election day, that we are assuming that everybody that enters that polling station location is COVID positive. And therefore, starting from that base, we have decided to put in place a number of protocols to deal with the issue. We have sought to recruit in excess of 7,400 persons, and we have put them into our team known as a sanitization team. Those 7,400 persons will spread across the 2,200 polling station location on election day. That team is geared towards ensuring that every person who enters our polling station location has on a mask. And also, that team will ensure that everybody who enters through that gate is sanitized and their temperature is taken, and then they are ushered into the polling station. For our workers, the workers that will be using in excess of 20,000 persons, every worker will have on a mask, they'll also have on a face shield, and also they'll be given the necessary sanitizing liquid to keep that process going to the day. So what will happen when the elector enters the gate? And again, I just urge everybody who is listening, ensure that when you come to the polling station that you have on a mask. There are persons who might ask why the EOJ or ECJ does not provide masks. On the list itself has 1.9 million persons. It's impossible for us to provide that. So therefore, we urge everybody to come to the polling station, wearing a mask. When you enter that gate, you'll be ushered into the polling station. What will happen is that on approaching the presiding officer, you'll be asked to temporarily remove your mask just for a couple of seconds, but the presiding officer can do the necessary identification check. Then you'll be asked by the presiding officer to replace your mask again, to put back on your mask. The presiding officer will then give you certain instruction. That instruction will include how to mark the ballot, and then will direct you behind the voting booth. What has happened in the past that you normally have a pencil tied to the voting booth. In this case, every elector will be given a separate pencil to go behind the voting booth to mark the ballot. And what will happen after that process is completed, they will then return to the presiding officer, taking along with them the pencil. That pencil will then be placed in a special box. And what will happen, after a certain number of votes, the pencil will then be removed by a member of our sanitization team and then re-sanitized. So no elector will be using the same pencil more than once. Every time you use a pencil, it's a sanitized pencil. And then the presiding officer will then go through the process. Before the elector is asked to dip their finger in the ink, the presiding officer will then again instruct them to re-sanitize their hand, and then before inserting that finger into the ink. Suffice to say though, that ink that we'll be using is alcohol-based, and it has certain chemical features that prevent this transmission of infection. So prior to the dipping of the finger, every elector is required to re-sanitize their hand and then proceed to dip their hand in the ink. And then they'll be instructed to out of the polling station and hope that everybody will then proceed to go home. So we have put in a number of checks and balance. Frequent sanitization will take place during the course of the day. The 7,400 persons that we have brought on board to assist us will continue the process on a regular basis right through the entire voting process. And the process starts at 7 a.m. and completes at 5 p.m.
Keys, check. Phone, check. Do you have your mask? Remember, it is illegal to leave your home and enter a public space without wearing a mask. And it's not to be on your chin, forehead, or in your hand. Actually, watch our next feature for a guide on wearing your mask the right way.
The government has been getting not necessarily requests, but persons seeking an understanding of government's position on the wearing of masks. And I'm going to invite the CMO to give us her guidance on this matter.
The Ministry of Health recommends the use of personal protective equipment by healthcare personnel. Our immediate priority is to secure personal protective equipment for health workers who are exposed by close contact with persons who are ill. Close contact means that health workers are within the 6 feet distance from their patients, and the wearing of personal protective equipment protects them from exposure. They cannot avoid close contact in order to care for patients, and that is why personal protective equipment are a must. The proper use of personal protective equipment by the health worker reduces the risk from high risk to no risk, even in environments of highest possible exposure. But even the highest trained healthcare worker has to be trained repeatedly in the donning and doffing of personal protective equipment. And the area where there is one of the greatest risk of infection is in the removal of a contaminated mask. The general public is encouraged to avoid close contact with possibly infected persons by several measures, including stay at home, avoid crowded situations, and avoid ill persons. Now, many persons are advocating for the routine wearing of masks by the general public. And yes, we agree that it can be helpful. It does offer some protection, especially where there are persons who are coughing and sneezing within your 3 to 6 feet personal space. It is not totally harmless, however, and the public must be cautious. Wearing a mask continuously is uncomfortable, and you must avoid touching and adjusting the mask, as if the mask is contaminated, you will contaminate your hands and infect yourselves and others. Perform hand hygiene every time you touch the mask. As soon as there is contamination of the mask, it must be discarded, as the risk gets higher of you contaminating yourself. If the mask is not worn properly, it will go up into your eyes. Do not rub or touch your eyes after touching the mask. Again, hand sanitize after touching the mask. Discard the mask if it becomes soiled or moist. This increases your risk of infecting yourself and others. You may be taking germs on the mask into several different settings and increasing the risk of transmission. Remove the mask by grasping the loops that are either at the back of your head or behind your ears and pulling forward and away from your face. Do not touch the front of the mask. The Ministry of Health and Wellness recommends the use of masks by persons who are ill with coughing and sneezing, persons who are quarantined or isolated at home with or without respiratory symptoms, and household members who care for the person or are in the same house. Persons who have COVID-19 and have been discharged from hospital should wear a mask for 2 weeks after they have been released and exercise infection protection control measures to safeguard family members. Persons who are at high risk of developing severe illness and complications of illnesses, such as the elderly and persons with chronic illnesses. These persons must avoid ill persons and minimize contact with the public. All other considerations are at the public's discretion. The wearing of the mask must be in addition to other infection control measures, such as regular hand washing and hand sanitizing, covering coughs and sneezes, and avoid touching your faces and avoid contact with ill persons.
A facial barrier can be helpful, whether it is a medical type mask like an N95, or maybe something like this, or probably something like this. It's a pretty nice looking mask. However, there are risks associated with them, and they are not substitutes for good practices that we have been saying. Washing the hands with soap and water. If you don't have, then sanitize. If you have to cough or sneeze, then the bend of your elbow is best, and don't touch anyone else afterwards. Maintaining your social distance. All of that is good. This would be in addition to. But the mask is a surface. And particularly in a situation where it is blocking the particles from coming in, they will rest on the surface. And like any other surface, the virus will live on it. So you have to be careful in, as you say, doffing, that is taking it off. So you can't hold the mask like this to take it off. You should take it off from here. If you're going to make that personal decision, then you should firstly seek not to deprive the medical professionals who would need the mask. But outside of that, it's your personal choice, bearing in mind the guidance that we have given.
Create, design, share, and win prizes with your art in the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management ODPEM Digital Poster Competition. Posters must be titled and themed Hurricane Preparedness. The competition opens August 13 and closes September 4. To enter, you must be a student between 12 and 18 years old. For more information on contest guidelines, visit our social media pages, website, or just give us a call. It's ODPEM's Digital Poster Competition. A number of persons on the island who have contracted COVID-19 did so locally. It's critical to know that the disease can be spread through clusters, at work or within neighborhoods. Right now, there are 4 locations on the island under quarantine. Watch now to hear how the government is tackling community transmission.
Our new reality is being pierced by a novel virus, COVID-19, lingering in our homes, offices, and streets, jabbing its fingers into our country's coffers, and playing front page on newspapers and lead stories whenever you stop for a watch. On March 10, there was 1, and from 1 to 2, to few, then to many. The not so simple truth is that the virus has spread. There are cases without a trace, so much so that here in Jamaica, we're now paying keen attention to the topic of community transmission or spread. As it relates to COVID-19, community transmission or community spread means the source of the infection is unknown. So someone has become infected with the virus, but health officials are not sure where or how that person was infected.
So the plan has always been to use restrictions to minimize, in the first instance, imported cases, to contain through contact tracing, through quarantining and isolation, the threat that may present itself in terms of potential cases, and to use that time to enhance the public health infrastructure in order to deal with what would have been an inevitable scenario given the nature of this virus, where it becomes more widespread across the country in terms of people picking up the virus from others and not even knowing that they have it because they may be asymptomatic and not knowing where it has come from, as is the case with earlier cases where we have a travel history that's linked to the virus. That phase is called community transmission or community spread.
Within this outbreak, there are 4 different phases. So there's no cases. We changed from no cases to what is called sporadic cases, just a few cases, which are likely to be imported cases. And then we have clusters of cases. That's where we have persons who are linked to each other. So you got the infection from a known person, and that is cluster. So they're probably in a geographic area together, or they went to an event together. The next phase is called community transmission. This is when there's large number of cases that are not linkable to other cases. And there will be multiple unrelated clusters.
So now that we understand community transmission, here's how it's getting a little more personal for us as Jamaicans.
It is expected, it is understood that it will happen, it is the way the virus works, and that is the case in all countries. So when you hear us say we have cases under investigation, which sometimes we put in the releases, it means that some cases don't have an immediate and obvious connection with an original person who traveled in.
We have to look at what we're seeing now. We are seeing more and more cases that are coming up without links. So it is telling us that we are having more and more local transmission of cases, and the numbers are getting larger and larger. So there is obviously a signal going out to all of us what we're dealing with.
The issue of community transmission is one that we think needs to be ventilated and to hopefully generate greater levels of sensitivity and understanding by the general population. Community spread could mean patients who are not as ill to require hospital care and therefore would have to be staying at home and isolating in order to get well.
Practice social distancing. If you're in public, stand 6 feet away from the persons around you. Avoid public spaces or crowded areas. Stay home. If it's absolutely necessary that you go out, wear a mask. Always wash your hands with soap and water. And if you can't, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer until you get access to soap and water.
But if we don't manage the virus, then it could spread too fast, too quickly, and could be a real challenge for public health to respond. So that terminology of managed spread is something that Jamaicans are going to have to eventually adopt, recognize, and understand. And that's the community spread phase that the efforts of public health have to be working on.
You have reached the final page of the magazine. Thanks much for being with us on today's journey. Another show unfolds tomorrow, so come back same time on this same station. Until then, click on our social media pages for more informative features. While there, please subscribe to our pages and channels so you can stay in the know. I'm Karen Smith-McIntosh, encouraging you to stay safe.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.